started, we want to be respectful of everybody's time. I am so jazzed for this today. We are talking with two of my favorite people, Jen-Kem and Maeve Ferguson, specifically USA Today bestselling author and other national bestseller list Jen-Kem, and also a top three book workshop alum. Really, I say my business strategy guru. And I don't like the word guru, but she totally is for me. And then Maeve Ferguson, who is an absolute genius in client diagnostic and funnels, assessments, quizzes, etc. And the thing is, I can use all those words to describe them, but what I want you to understand is if you are trying to build a business around your book, you need to talk to them. So I'm so thrilled that they are here. They came to talk to my author collective. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, which is a private community for workshop alums, and blew everyone away. We could have talked for hours and it wouldn't have been enough. And I'm just so honored that they came to speak to all of you, so you can learn more. Hi, Maeve. Hi, Jen.
Hi. Hello, we're so excited to be here, AJ. Thank you for inviting us. And I definitely want to get to not just the juicy content, but the Q&A, because I know that questions come up and we want to field them as much as we can. So we want to jump right in. But if you have questions or ahas along the way, please jump into the chat and just, kind of put them there because then we can also make sure we're getting to it. So I'm going to kick off and then hand the reins over to Maeve. And you can think of it as like I'm the strategy brain and Maeve is the executor brain. And our goal today is just to kind of share with you a different way, we hope, of looking at how to use your book as a catalyst for your business and to be a nucleus for your business. Because you're already in the right community if you came here through AJ Harper. I want to say that AJ was my book coach. I am a top three alum. And this year, just based on all of the wins that I've been able to experience with my book launch, has a lot to do with my commitment to writing a must read, to writing a book that actually, people would not just enjoy, but that they would actually use and they would refer and that it would have a long game impact. And so, one of the things that, I think of AJ as is like she's the hemisphere to my marketing strategy brain because she helped make sure and encourage me not to take the shortcut way, which I never would have done anyway, because I'm not built like that, but to writing great material and things that have, again, that long game view. And I'm the one who's always like, how do we make sure that this doesn't just stop at the book itself? Like, how many of you, if you've already written a book or you have, you're in the process of getting the book done, understand that, like, and hate, maybe even hate's a strong word, but I think it comes up a lot when people talk to me, the thought of marketing or selling your book. Anybody? To be honest with you, even though I'm good at it, I don't really love it myself because I know that the writer's heart is very tender because we're putting our words and our thoughts and our experiences between what feels very permanent in the form of a book. And that's why how I look at building a business and a brand using a book is about actually like not thinking of it as just like a one time, oh my gosh, I hit the bestsellers list or I finished my book type of thing, but actually a way of thinking about how to build a business with a book involved. And so let me jump in and share my slides, and then I'm going to hand it off to Maeve. Um, just a real quick intro about me. I'm a brand strategist, and some people call me a futurist. I like to say that, I can smell the money in people's businesses and brands. And I spent most of my career as the rainmaker and the secret weapon behind a lot of different types of businesses, including companies like Netflix, DoorDash, Coca-Cola, Oracle, Microsoft, and then many personal brands like Oprah, Steve Harvey, and a number of New York Times bestselling authors. And on that road to being that, one of my dreams was to write a book. And in fact, not just a book, but books, right? And I said that by the age of 50, I would at least publish my first thought leadership offering into the world. And so that happened in this year in 2025 called Unicorn Team. And I realized that once I put on my author pants, okay, which felt very tight, um, that the brand and the business part of it, I was really good at. And I realized that authors were not getting the right support or a fair shake because they weren't strategic or they weren't thinking about being strategic. They were being offered a lot of what I call short-term fixes, like, oh, you got to get your bestsellers launched, you got to get reviews, you got to get, you want to get speaking gigs and trainings and all these things, and we all want that. But there wasn't an integrated way to look at it. And I realized after I hit a lot of speed bumps, and frankly, I'm still in recovering from my post-launch hangover in February, and it's now what? It's November now, that there was a more integrated way to do that. And so, in approaching my own book launch, I realized that one of the ways that I did with that was by building in an assessment funnel into my business. And that's why Maeve is going to show you how it was one of the key pillars of my book launch and now is creating what I call a post-launch afterburn, which is a good thing. While I'm burnt out a little bit from my book launch, the assessment funnel and things that we built, because I built it ahead of time, now are bringing in leads and interest and bigger contracts for speaking gigs and trainings because I thought of it beforehand. And I never even thought of it as something special. I just thought of it as like, this is the way I do things until we're post the launch. And that's the thing that Maeve and I wanted to share today. And I think that's why AJ is so excited for you guys to know about it. So really quick, I'm proud to say that in AJ's top three, I was one of the first to hit a major list. I was so excited, and we continue to see all of those incredible wins. Janet, by the way, congratulations. Just getting even 80 reviews is so hard. And so it helps when you have a community like AJ's who are really focused on producing craft work, great work, right? So that's the first step. So if you're here and whether you've taken one of AJ's programs or not, I will say that is a critical component, like building books that matter and that because in a world of AI and automation, actually we're even more important than ever. That's actually what's exciting for me. I'm like, AI cannot replace human thought and human heart. And we actually need that more than ever. And that's why this strategic thinking is so important. Like we got to bring strategy back because over the past decade with automation and focusing only on execution or vision, which is great. You need vision, you need execution. But one thing that's been missing is strategy. And I want to share how the strategic thinking, how you build a business and a brand and a book at the same time is a more frankly sane way to go. And also just it'll work better. So I'm going to skip through these slides. I just want to show you quickly how I approached my book launch. You know, I got all the like the fun things that I always wanted, which was a Times Square billboard, and got invited to a lot of dinners and had conversations during my book launch, which a book allows you to actually get out there and talk to people. People don't believe me, but I'm an introvert, and people think, oh, I speak on stages and whatnot. I bet some of you who are also speakers probably identify maybe as more introverted too. And books and speaking on stages actually allows you like kind of that real you to come alive. And so, I had a lot of things happen for the book launch. It allowed me to get on a ton of podcasts and different media outlets. We hit number one on Amazon's hot new releases in a major category. And again, because when you're self-published, you can hit a category in Amazon pretty easy. But if you're in one of the major categories, it's not easy. And so I want to acknowledge everybody who understands what it takes to hit those lists. Was a top 10 on the USA Today's bestsellers book list. I even beat Bill Gates on the New York Times. Even though he hit the New York Times, I hit him in book sales. And it just also showed how sometimes it's not just how many books you sell, but it's also like editorial and a lot of other things. And I hit that list twice in a month, which only 1% of authors do. And that has allowed me to be able to leverage those things in when I pitch to the media now, or when I, and even better help with the assessment that we're going to talk about in a moment, because it's how I thought through the whole bestsellers campaign that helped me hit some of these major milestones. Okay, so I'm just going to cut through it and show you how I did it, like the thinking of how I did it. Now, we're only here for an hour, so I really want to focus on three areas, which are in these pink highlighted areas. So first is the writing a must read, which is AJ Harper's methodology around how to even have a book that people want, right? And so again, I can't reinforce more that I'm sure if you're here, you've read AJ's book. If you haven't, please get it. It is a masterclass in a book, and a book should have your best stuff in it. And I think that's when you are a craft person, when you're focused on that, it is part of the equation. So what I do is I'm not here to teach you how to write a must read. That's AJ's area of genius. What I'm here to say is if you're going to work that hard on writing a must read, then you have to also, in my opinion, be thinking through how this affects your business model, your brand authority, and creating a best-selling book. It's not part of the problem today is people separate the three. They go after them one or the other, and what happens is our business becomes the enemy of our brand, and then our brand becomes the enemy of our book. And what I mean by that is a lot of us have waited a long time to finish our books because we're so busy running our businesses, or perhaps we have a professional job or an academic job, and we're saying next year and next year and next year. How many of you did that? Because I did that. It's why I was behind so many bestsellers, but I wasn't doing my own book because I kept making it a nice to have instead of realizing that it was actually the tipping point for creating more elegance and gravitas in my career. And so, assuming you're pursuing writing a must read and you're part of AJ's community, whether you're in top three or maybe you're part of one of her memberships, the key to making sure that your book goes somewhere is having a bestseller campaign. And the bestseller campaign, in my opinion, should be thought about as you're writing your book. It's not just like after your book or even like what you dream of or have a vision of, but it's kind of like as you're writing your book, thinking through how can I make sure that my book gets readily shared, has juicy bonuses, and then has a post launch impact and ROI, right? So, and then that goes up to, so this is your book itself, but then that directly feeds the cash flow for your business, right? Through what we call a thought leader funnel, which includes an assessment type of diagnostic, which Maeve is going to, share the three different types of diagnostics to be thinking through as an author. But I wanted to share with you that this is the mental model and the thought leadership framework that we use to make sure that we're not separating, but integrating our book pursuits, our brand pursuits, and our business pursuits. Okay. Now, I could teach, as AJ said, we could talk for hours about this, but I wanted to just give you a taste at the top of like how to be thinking about it and what made me find Maeve, which is really the next part of the story, in creating what I call this science-based, what I call author-centric thought leadership fulcrum to allow you to have everything you want, the respect and recognition for your brand, the paid speaking engagements and business models that support, and then the books that actually give you credibility and gravitas. So when I was working on, so this is the story. So when I was working on my bestseller campaign strategy, there were 9 pillars of doing a bestseller campaign. Now I'm going to talk about 2 of the pillars, and they both include Maeve. So that's why we're here, and that's the scope of today. And up front, I said, I want to make sure that I sell 25,000 books at launch. Now, if you know the statistics about selling books, especially in the nonfiction prescription category, it doesn't matter if you go uh, if you go hybrid, traditional, or even self-publish, the statistics for selling books is quite low. And that to me is a real problem and it's very sad. And I was like, I want to fix that. And I think it's because we're burnt out from writing an incredible book too, and all of the emotional and physical effort that goes into that. And I was like, I don't want to be burnt out from that. So ahead of time, even while I was writing my book, I already wrote out my bestseller campaign strategy. And there are 9 pillars. The good news is I have to date sold over 25,000 books of Unicorn Team and will continue to sell them because of the assessment that I built into the book. And so I can't go into all 9 pillars at the moment, but happy to share at any point because I'm also in the top 3 group, authors group. If you ever want to hit me up, I'm here as a resource. I mean that. But based on the time we have today, I want to make sure we focus on the 2 pillars, which were pillars 8 and 9 of my book launch strategy. And pillar 8 was creating or canonizing really from an analog assessment to a digital assessment that supported my book. And mine is called the ULTA or the Unicorn Leadership Type Assessment. And I wanted to create a first in category assessment and funnel for to continue to get evergreen insights from my readers, as well as be able to offer it as a paid diagnostic to corporate and larger team sales opportunities. And so when I wanted to convert this, I was literally hunting for the right resource. And my book is called Unicorn Team because my book is about finding the unicorns, like in my life, writing a must read. AJ is my unicorn. Who do I want to help guide me to write this amazing book? I want AJ Harper. I want Laura Stone. I want that team to be, helping me. When it came to this diagnostic, because I had my strategy thought out, when I got introduced to Maeve, because I was on the hunt for a specific person who could help me do this with my vision, and I think Maeve will tell you this, and you could feel free, Maeve, to unmute yourself. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never worked with somebody who's actually thought it out like this. This is super helpful. We can get this done faster." And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "I wish that more authors had the strategy piece dialed in because then." That's kind of like the bridge between what AJ does and what Maeve does is I'm kind of think of me as like the sticky glue. Like I'm kind of like translating your book vision and ultimate like monetization strategy for the book and how it affects your brand into the right diagnostics, the content of your diagnostics, so that Maeve can put her marketing engine on it because she's like this genius at creating the marketing engine to power the diagnostic. And so for me, it was the Ulta. I don't know if any of you have ever read my book or got the Ulta, but I'm not gonna lie, I think it's pretty great and not just that it's fancy because it is branding wise all aligned. I'm a brand strategist, so I did have that as part of my strategy too. In fact, that was pillar number 2, which was like, what is the branding of the book and the subsequent brand. Um, but it wasn't just that; it was actually like deeply insightful. I wanted anything I did. If my book's going to be a must read, I wanted to make sure anything you got from my book was also a must read, like these reports that we built from the book, that they weren't disjointed, that they actually made the reader even more interested in themselves first, right? Because that's the whole point of a diagnostic is it's to make them see themselves in your methodology. And if you're writing a book about that, then this is a way to further their interest and to adopt your methodology. And so this was pillar number 8. And I got introduced to Maeve through a mutual colleague and friend who was a former client of mine. And I was a client of his, Ryan Levesque, who is known for quiz funnels, introduced me to Maeve. And I flew over to Ireland to get it done. And I'm not saying any of you need to fly to Ireland to do this, but it's actually quite a nice visit. But we're going to also share with you how you can maybe approach this if you want to do it, as AJ mentioned later. And then pillar number 9, which allowed me to think about all the upsells, including the diagnostic for not just my book launch, but post book launch. So they ended up integrating together, which then made my life easier, right? And I'm a big like stack your success strategist. I'm like, how can I integrate things, make them kind of work on their own and still represent me and be smart? Smart and useful and quality, not clickbait, Disney princess diagnostics. I got nothing against Disney princesses, but those kind of clickbaity type of lead magnets where it's like, what's your Disney princess type or whatever. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about deep insights for your audience based on your work, not on something that's just clickbaity. It's based on your craft. And so that's why I think AJ and I and Maeve, we get on so well together too, because we care so deeply that we're not peddling extra shit, pardon my language, out there. Like the world doesn't need more crap, right? It doesn't need more bots. It doesn't need more it actually needs more of our thoughtfulness, our wisdom. To me, we're entering, even though it feels very noisy out there, into the wisdom economy. Like finally, wisdom is going to have a bigger place on the bigger stage, but it's only if you start thinking more strategically like this and using assessments to do that. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the baton over to Maeve so she can jump into how you can think about creating your next assessment based on your strategic thinking. So let me just stop sharing my screen and I'll be learning alongside with you if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so thanks a million, Jen. That was absolutely brilliant, and I think it has just teed this up perfectly because we gotta have that strategy before we start doing what makes me happy. So I'm a mobilizing strategizer. Whenever you go through Ulta, you will know what I mean. So I am the person who adores pushing the buttons, going down all the rabbit holes. But we gotta have that overall strategy before we even think about starting to build your diagnostic assessment. Okay. And this is all about basically our client engine, this piece of the training. And this is where the strategic book launch meets diagnostic intelligence. Now, this is going to be very much like a how-to session. I'm going to cover a lot of ground and I don't have long, so bear with me. I'm going to try and go as slow as I can, but also we've got a lot of ground to cover, but it is definitely a how-to session. So you're going to want to be scribbling notes, taking down what is relevant for you. And essentially, the core problem that we see, myself and Jen see over and over and over again, is that your book that you are either have written or are writing or are in process or even just ideating is going to be brilliant, okay? But to grow a business that is connected to that book, you are going to have to be on all the time, constantly explaining your frameworks, qualifying leads, and then demonstrating your expertise over and over again on endless discovery calls. And we see this a lot in the author game. And then they put so much energy into writing the book that then it just depletes and dies very, very quickly afterwards if we don't take all of this into account. And the brutal truth about book-based business is that you write the brilliant book, you launch it even successfully, and those Amazon reviews roll in, podcast invitations arrive, those speaking requests are coming through left, right, and center. But the piece that nobody tells you is that every lead still requires you to explain it. Every sales call still requires you to qualify, even if they have read your book in the first place. Every speaking gig still requires you to show up or follow up manually. And your book has created awareness around you and your brand. But unfortunately, from a business perspective, and this is the angle that I'm coming from, is that you're still the bottleneck in that conversation. And the pattern that we see that keeps repeating is like, oh my God, I loved your book so much. Then you have discovery calls explaining what your book has already taught. Then you have people saying things like, oh yeah, like let me think about it. And then if you wonder, it's like, if my book were this brilliant, why am I still explaining everything over and over again? And if I stop, everything stops. And I think it's this being on all the time that the book doesn't go beyond the book, or the keynote doesn't go beyond the keynote when we don't have these diagnostics in place. So my invitation for you this evening or today, wherever you are, is that what if your framework could demonstrate itself without you even being present? What if your framework could grow your email list and qualify those leads as they're coming through? And what would it be like for you if your prospects were arriving to you already pre-sold on your expertise because they have already experienced your diagnostic thinking? And what if your framework got you on the bestseller list, just like it did for Jen-Kem? Okay, this is how you do it. All right. And the transformation that is available today is being the person who becomes referenced in your market, not just another expert, not just another book on a similar topic to other people, but instead being like a unicorn leadership type assessment or strength finder or disc or fascinate, i.e., becoming that category of one. Okay, and this is the power of diagnostic infrastructure. And your book, as I said, even if it's still in progress or even just an idea, it already contains everything that you need to build this. Okay, I'm going to go through it and break it down very methodically, very step by step. And everything you need is actually between your two ears. Okay, your framework is proven, otherwise, you wouldn't be writing a book about it. Your dimensions are validated, even if you don't even know yet what dimensions are. And your audience trusts you. And that is a huge, huge component as well. So all that is missing then is this diagnostic architecture that turns your framework and converts them into clients. Okay. So what makes these category of one people completely different? So framework authorities say, here's my methodology. Here's how I do things. Category of one authorities have a diagnostic that everybody takes to actually understand themselves a little bit better. So like, as I said, with Ulta, I'm a mobilizing strategizer. Enneagram, I'm a 3 with a 4 wing. Myers-Briggs, I'm INTJ. We form attachments to the outcomes and the diagnosis that we have been given. And again, framework authorities are compared to other experts with similar ideas, where we look at people who have a habits book, for example, and there are 4 million of them. Okay. Category of one authorities, on the other hand, are the reference point that others are compared against. So your opportunity is your prescriptive nonfiction book can become that definitive, but only if we build this diagnostic infrastructure to match it. Okay, so before we dive into the how-to, let's talk about your next 3 years. And it's really crucial because this is very individual and this is very, very personal about where we are headed. Because all of us have different goals. You, I, Jen, everybody, AJ, we all have different goals, but moving fast in the wrong direction is not going to get us where we want to be. So I invite you either pop it in the chat or just write it down in your notebook. What is your goal with your book? And then what we want to consider is that every single one of us is sitting here at this point. And one of 4 things is essentially going to happen over the next 6 months, over the next 3 years. And for those who write the book and the book ends at the book, what's going to end up happening is there probably be a flurry of activity around book launch week with family and friends cheering us on. But we end up becoming the invisible author because we don't have an infrastructure and an ecosystem, like Jen mentioned, that makes it a perennial bestseller. And the ecosystem, the book sales feed the diagnostic, and the diagnostic feeds the book sales. We end up being completely invisible. And then for others who maybe do some things in place and they get some leads out of their business, they end up being respected, but a massive bottleneck in their business because they might have loads of readers coming into their world, but those readers aren't necessarily qualified to work with them, qualified to buy their programs, and they end up being the bottleneck because they're manually qualifying everybody that comes through. They're doing absolutely painful discovery calls with people who were never going to invest in them in the first place. And then the busy expert is getting on a little bit better, but I bet your bottom dollar, if you're working with AJ, your goal isn't to kind of get to this yellow tier where it's like good enough. We all want to be the absolute best in the world. And the busy expert is they're super, super busy. They're getting clients, they've grown their business, but they're pigeoned into that expert category. They are not seen as the one in the industry. And we can all in our mind's eye visualize those people where we just know they are a category of one. And that is what happens at this top level when we choose to put this infrastructure in place. So today is all about making sure that you are in the green. Jen just covered the strategy. So now we're going to build the infrastructure with the client engine. And there is a lot here. I could literally spend 5 full days going through and unpacking all of this. Okay, so we're going to just kind of touch on the most important pieces. But essentially, there are three main components to codify your body of work. So we've got authority assets, which is your diagnostic assessment. We've got smart scale intelligent, which is agentic AI that is the flywheel to the foundation that your assessment provides inside of your business. And then legacy architecture, which is all about your positioning, your offers, and then licensing as well. Okay, so let's say codified body of work is what we are all aiming for to become that category of one. And what happens a lot of people is when they literally just write their book. They are risking, they don't have infrastructure, they don't have a way of generating leads, they're going to be forgotten. And then for those who are manually doing all of the work like it's 1992 inside of their businesses, they end up being really bottlenecked. And to be totally honest, a lot of them hate their lives. And then for others who don't have the right positioning and don't have an agile way to make offers to their market, they actually have a really, really fragile business. Okay, so authority assets is how we're going to overcome this forgotten piece. Okay, so there is no risk of ever being forgotten when we have this in place. And pillar number one of that is this is your diagnostic foundation. This is the ultimate foundation of your business. The agentic AI stuff that I'm going to talk about in a moment doesn't matter a fiddler if we don't have this basic foundation in place. Okay, and this is the piece that transforms your book framework into a diagnostic assessment that does many, many things. So, first of all, it helps readers self identify where they are in your methodology. So, case in point, I'm a mobilizing strategizer. Me learning that, me understanding that that's actually my superpower. My business has exploded since I discovered that I'm a mobilizing strategizer because I really, really lent into I am the best executor in the entire world on getting stuff done. Okay. It also can demonstrate really sophisticated understanding of your specific situation. So if you've ever been through one of these things and you're kind of like, this is creepy, like, are you inside my head? How do you know that I think like this? Like, I feel like this. It really collapses the length of time that it takes online to build, know, like, and trust because it is so accurate and so specific. And it also allows you to create these I need help with this moments, okay? Without any bro marketing, sleaze, creepy stuff. It is just like, wow, this person really knows their stuff. I want them to help me. Okay, and then it generates data about your audience composition. And this is probably one of the things that I see people missing out the most is that, and like I'm an absolute data junkie, I am obsessed with data, but most people aren't because it is probably kind of boring for normal people. Okay, I am not normal. And it is this data, even if you are early in your business, even if you are going like, what would my offers be? Okay, gathering data from day dot is so critical because data equals power. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do inside of authority assets is your IP mapping. And this is what Jen mentioned earlier, where we talked about three different assessment types. And I think of them along a spectrum, and one is not the poor cousin to the other or vice versa. They're just different use cases for different scenarios. Okay, so a quiz style assessment, or what people call a quiz funnel, this is where it's super quick, super fast, super easy, and you're asking maybe, between 5, 10, 11, 12 questions, and you're bucketing people into your kind of type A, type B, type C, type D. Okay, and it's fun, it's easy, it's quick, and it creates the kind of the virality play of I'm a such and such, but it lacks the deep sophistication. So it doesn't feel like a disc or a strength finders. Okay. Score-based diagnostic then is the second one. And this is where you have, for example, a Likert scale, maybe kind of in and around 20 or 30 questions, where you're giving people a numerical score or percentage across 3 to 5 dimensions. So if you've got a framework that has 3, 4, 5 pillars or a Venn diagram, that maybe has four circles or 3 circles or whatever it may be, a score-based diagnostic is probably a really good fit for you. Okay, and this is really good for capability-based frameworks where you want to demonstrate measurable areas for improvement. So somebody goes through it, they see like I'm 72% in this area, doing pretty good, but over here, ooh, this area, I'm 32%. And then the whole idea is that that professional positioning, the copy that that person sees is completely different to the copy that's, somebody who gets a completely different result. And it feels very, very personalized. And then type three. So this is the most sophisticated by a country mile. So multidimensional diagnostic, like we built for the unicorn leadership type. And it's measuring multiple independent dimensions simultaneously, complex profiling, where we have, high, medium, low across various different categories, very kind of high ticket positioning, super personalized reports. And there's a real big play there for certifications, licensing, and things like that that I'll talk about later on. Okay, so this is kind of like Myers-Briggs level sophistication that really demonstrates that, you're the absolute upper end of your game. So have a think and just write down which one, or even pop it in the chat, which one you think would be most appropriate for you. Then we want to move into diagnostic architecture. So first of all, we've decided what type of assessment are we going to build. And what we want to do here then is really understand that there are five main dimension categories. Okay, so we've got capability based. I'm going to run through these quickly because I'm just a little bit concerned about time. So we've got capability based, we've got value based dimensions, we've got stage based dimensions. So developmental progression, where are they on a roadmap, for example? And then we have type based, where it is like approaches or personalities and things like that. And then we have problem-based dimensions as well. And your book, when you think about your book and how it is structured, you want to tease out what those 3 to 7 dimensions across all of those categories may be, because that is what's going to become your diagnostic architecture. Okay, and then this is where we start crunching the numbers, and this is scorecraft. And essentially, regardless of what type of assessment you pick, they are all built with a scoring engine in the back end. Okay, so quiz style scoring is, we use branching logic, we're using weighted point values, leading to then a dominant type. Score based, again, is just dimensional calculations where somebody's getting scored like 0 to 100 over all of these different pillars of your framework. And then for multi-dimensional scoring, this is where we have super complex algorithms calculating like dimensional intersections to create really nuanced profiles. And this can be exponentially complex. My invitation to you would to be not to make it more complex than it needs to be. Okay. And then what we have as well is smart routing, or what you guys call it, routing integration. And this is my personal favorite because we'll talk about this more in a moment. But essentially, we don't want to treat all leads as equal because all leads are not created equal. Somebody could take our diagnostic and not be able to invest, $1,000 in us, and other people could go through our diagnostic and be able to spend $1 million working with us. And we really want to make sure that you're putting the right offer in front of the right person at the right time. And part of the scorecraft allows us to identify who are what we call our tier one leads or our platinum leads, diamond leads, gold leads, silver leads, and bronze leads, and then make the appropriate offer based on what we know they're going to be able to invest in themselves. Okay, so like a diagnostic assessment like that is, for example, we built exactly one like that, a score-based diagnostic for Mike Kim, same for Selena Sue, who felt it was like a white glove experience, and same for your guys in your own community, and the amazing John Briggs. Those were score-based diagnostic examples. Okay, now moving into smart scale intelligence. This is where we want to move from one-dimensional data to agentic AI intelligence. And basically what most assessments do is that it gives you the result. This person is type A, type B. This person scored 72%. This person is, their top level is this and their bottom level is this. But that's literally all you know. And there's so much more power in diagnostics. And the business owner or the author ends up having to still manually figure out, are these people who are coming through ready to buy, or are they just browsing? Can they afford our high ticket thing? Which of our offers is going to be the right fit for them? What messaging is going to land? When should you follow up? What should you follow up with? And one-dimensional data creates one-dimensional outcomes, okay? Because everybody's getting treated as the same. And you'll know this is you if you're sending the same email to everybody on your list so that they all see the same copy. That's always a really good tell. So with smart scale intelligence, This reveals investment capacity signals. Okay, so we're able to ask questions around budget authority, how much they're going to be able to spend. Readiness intelligence, so knowing who are the people that have just taken our diagnostic where it is urgent, they are ready to go, it's a right now thing. Offer fit intelligence as well. So some people, I know myself, I prefer to work privately with my mentors. Okay, some people love group environments. Some people like, just self-study. So having that offer fit intelligence is another layer that is super, super important. And then communication intelligence, which is really, really important about, we're able to analyze language patterns and problem framing and different messaging approaches. And the beauty of this piece is this is entirely automated because we build it with agentic AI. Okay, so we have that smart routing engine. So essentially, we're able to identify who's able to who is going to be able to pay you. We don't find this out after they finish the assessment or during a manual checkup or on a call. We know this information in real time, and different questions are giving different signals to that buyer readiness. Then for the inside edge, this is where we can use, again, agentic AI to do performance tracking, lead quality intelligence, where we're able to analyze the words that people are saying, how people are answering certain questions in our assessments, and then what they are going on to buy. And we're able to do pattern recognition over time to see what do we need to say in our top of funnel copy, whether that's organic, whether that's in a podcast interview, whether that's with paid traffic. What are the words we need to say top of funnel to drive more and more people who answer the questions just like this and spend 100K with us versus 10K with us? Okay, and then you can do A/B testing frameworks and all of those amazing things. My absolute favorite in terms of this agentic AI piece is messaging refinement. Okay, and I don't mean we don't use AI to write our words ever, ever, ever. But we're able to self-optimize the diagnostic. So just think of it as this ecosystem where your book leads into the diagnostic. Your diagnostic is almost self-powered and self-optimizing over time and giving us more and more and more advice over time. It tells us here's how to shift your positioning. Here's how to shift this copy. Here's why this ad that you wrote is bringing through all of these broke-ass leads. It allows us to do sales pattern analysis, revenue intelligence, and gives us really strategic recommendations about the next moves to make. And the whole idea here, as I said earlier, is none of this would be possible without the diagnostic, because all we have, if we don't have a diagnostic, we have a name, email address, and if we're lucky, a phone number. We don't have any data on our people. So what this allows us to do is the assessment is the foundation. It is mandatory. It is the baseline to get all of this. And then all of this allows your company to just absolutely accelerate. Okay. And then the ready buyer pipeline, these are just some really cool ones where you're able to identify all of the high ticket buyers hiding on your list. Our hot leads alert system. So as soon as somebody goes through and we know they're a platinum lead, my sales team is notified and they're able to follow up with that person in a completely different way than they do with somebody who is a bronze or a silver lead, for example. And proposal automation. So you hang up in a sales conversation and hey presto, a beautiful web-based proposal is built based on all of the struggles that they went through, that they told you about in the diagnostic, the conversation on the call, and we've matched all of that with the offer that we can make them. Okay, and all of this is automated. And one of the clients that we're rolling all of this out for at the moment is the amazing Rihanna. And then finally, I'm going to have to maybe just gloss over this one really quickly because I know we want to leave time for Q&A. But this one is legacy architecture. And we have authority positioning. And again, the system tracks who buys, who doesn't buy. The agents review who bought, who didn't buy. What are the patterns? What's going on here? We review the top of funnel copy, analyze the price points, and then we recommend these changes in messaging. And it just becomes this feedback loop essentially inside of your business. The offer engine, again, then this allows us to identify demand for offers that we didn't even think of, that we didn't know existed, because all of the information we need for our businesses is inside of our data. If we just know how to hear the data and see the data appropriately, it tells us exactly what offer to create. It gives us pricing intelligence and offer recommendations as well. And then one of my favorite plays for the likes of your like the Jen-Kems of the world, this authority licensing play where there's licensing models, white labeling models, certifications with a lovely, lovely typo, where you have a true diagnostic like an Ulta or a disc where you have multi-million dollar empire in your hands through licensing and certification. So, for example, unicorn leadership type, as I said, and another one there that we have in the retirement industry. So that's kind of the complete blueprint at 400 miles an hour. I hope that you kind of were able to follow along there. But essentially, think about don't worry about any of the AI stuff yet. Just get that foundation. What is your framework? What is your model? What is the diagnostic assessment type that is most appropriate for your business? Don't make it more complex than it needs to be. So don't make your life harder than it has to be. Put it into the fabric of your book and then allow that smart routing to show the right message and the right offer to the right person at the right time based on your framework. Okay, so any questions?
Jen, do
Francis, oh, please go ahead, AJ.
Jen, do you want to answer this question from Lisa?
Yeah. So first of all, see how smart Maeve is? Like she's just like this little like she's the HI, what I call the human to the AI brain, and she knows how to use AI in a way that doesn't replace us, but actually just superpowers us. So, Maeve, every time we talk, you like blow my mind, and I think I want to kind of like really point back to uh, that when I answer the questions. Okay, so Lisa asked, "Do you recommend charging participants for taking the assessment?" So maybe. And probably is my answer. And here's why. That's why you need to know what your strategy is. Like, how does your assessment link back to your book content as well as your business model? That's why when I showed the strategy piece that I was talking about is you should always have a price point for anything you have, but you can give it as a bonus and give them a coupon for 100% off, right? You can, and the first assessment that Maeve mentioned, which is typically called a lead magnet type of quiz, typically those are free. They're not for charge. But the other two assessments that she mentioned, you should have a price point on it that then you decide to use based on whether it's part of your book launch campaign, whether you're using it maybe as a bonus for a program that you're selling. So there's nuance, and that's why you need your individual kind of strategic thinking of how you would leverage this type of assessment and how you can create price perception strategy for the assessment. So the answer is yes, you should charge for it, but not for everything you do. It's based on your strategy of how you're going to use the assessment.
Yeah, and I think I'll just piggyback on that. Like that's a huge, huge reason why you hit the bestseller list and sold so many copies in your first
It
week.
is.
Because
Yeah.
Jen had an expiry. So Ulta was 197 or 199, and it was free up until pub date. And then it was paid, which drove, and you got the assessment for free when you bought your book. So she ended up selling thousands and thousands of books because people wanted to get their hands on the Ulta when it was free as opposed to buy it 2 days after launch and then it's not free anymore, but there's more tricks you can then use post launch to use that assessment to drive book sales.
And high ticket offers really, right? Because then if your assessment is used as the core of when, like, say you're working with a company, whatever size, you use your assessment as a diagnostic to assess their business operations or whatever you do, right? The company could pay for it, and or it could be kind of like a bonus that they get as a diagnostic that showcases your knowledge and expertise, and then ends up selling like bigger trainings and that type of thing. So you can use the diagnostic for a variety. It's a lever. It's a lever you get to use, that everyone's always interested in, because companies and individuals always want to know more about themselves. And so it's a way for it to be more approachable.
So we have a question from Catherine, and she asks, at what point in the development of the book do you start?
Hmm. So my answer is everyone, in my opinion, should be thinking about it now, whether your book's in process or not. Meaning your thought of having a framework and an assessment is a decision point that makes you even look at your book and ask yourself, is there a place in my book where where it would make natural sense to mention? And what's good is you can make money with a diagnostic assessment even before your book comes out so that it's funding your book. So there's a lot of ways to think about this instead of it just being the book itself. This is where I talked about up front, where the book becomes an enemy of your brand and your business if not thought through strategically. And that's when Maeve and I were like, we got to really teach people that it's more of an integrated thought process, not just a, hey, I should go pay for this to go get a book coach. Hey, I should go pay for a diagnostic. And then you're like, what do I do with all of it? You need to think
Mhm.
strategically why you're doing it so that you can make the right moves at the right time with the right people.
Jen, I feel like I'm just going to skip over real quick and we'll come back. But Jill is asking a question that relates. Have you ever had an author test prior to launch and use the data to sharpen both the book and the assessment before the book is complete?
Yeah. I mean, the answer is before I had the diagnostic digitized with this really genius framework that Maeve just shared with all of us, my assessment was analog, meaning, I mean, it was in a type form, people come into type form and they could fill it out, but it didn't have all those deep insights and segmentation and all those buckets and pieces that Maeve helped make sure that I have such clear. I know what people are caring about. I know the type of people that are taking the Ulta. And so I think that we should all be using analog means to test our diagnostics beforehand anyway, because that's another problem I think with books that have assessments. They like only do the assessment for the book without this thought of like, no, this is actually a lever that I use in the way that I share my work. And now the book itself is an approachable way for people to access it versus the high ticket ways to access it. So my answer is like, think if you're deciding that the assessment is a good idea for you for all the reasons that Maeve and I taught today, it should become even before you finish your book if you can. If you can. And if you already finished your book, you can do it now as something you do after the book, right? So it's not a bad time to do it, but thinking through it as early as possible, I think is a really good idea.
And by the way, all of you can change, well, you might not be able to change the print version of your book. You can if you are top tier hybrid, low tier hybrid, or self-publishing. You can change the print book easily. But even if you're traditionally published and you don't have the option to change the print book, you can always add links to anything you want after the fact in the ebook version. And so there's no reason why you can't actually do this after the fact. I know we have a lot of published authors who are already published here, so it's okay. It's all right. You didn't miss the boat. Um,
Just to give comfort on that, like we build these a lot for people who, had a best-selling book in 2020 and now we're building their diagnostic and it just becomes part of the ecosystem. So if you're already published, yeah, 100% fine.
so Lisa's asking, how can you ensure the diagnostic assessment is seen as credible by other experts in the field?
Mhm.
So maybe you want me to take that one real quick? I'll start and then
Yeah, yeah,
if you
go
want to
for
jump
it.
in. So the thing is that's why even doing it while so my Ulta was not again, Disney princess type of quiz or assessment. I've been using this diagnostic for over 15 years in my business. No one knew about it who wasn't in corporate because I didn't use it for entrepreneurs. I used it mainly for corporate teams where we were doing go to market. So, whereas I have another assessment called the brand archetype assessment that I plan on even bringing to what I call its 2.0 level that I've been using for 13 years too. And so back to like when we talk about credible by other experts, what other experts, I guess I'd say like if you can showcase you've been using it and you just didn't make it up just because your book is here, that's one thing to think about. And or if actually you realize your book would be helped by an assessment and it is brand new, you're just saying this assessment is based on the research that I did in conjunction with my book. I interviewed 100 people and they took this diagnostic while I was writing the book. That is gravitas, that is credibility. Now, if you're more like thinking like, oh, I want to make sure like the University of Pennsylvania, acknowledges that that's diagnostic works, then that's actually a process by which you get the university to champion and invest in the diagnostic, which by the way, universities do. But that should not be a reason that you don't pursue your own, like what I call like obsessed curiosity about your clients. Like a diagnostic and even writing a book, right? AJ, it's about being obsessed with your reader. It's like I'm obsessed with what the reader's going to get out of this. A diagnostics job is to help you understand even more why your reader is valuing your work, right? And so for me, hitting the bestsellers list, especially with a hybrid or traditionally published book, already gives credibility, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you said that too because y'all don't know. So part of the reason that so Jen's mentioning that she has this other assessment that she was able to build this massive mailing list because she had it for 13 years. Now she built it pretty fast actually. That asset is the part of the reason she was able to get a big five book deal. It was
Yeah.
part of her platform. And I'm going to tell you right now that we know based on recent studies that the mailing, and we've known this for a while, but now it's really being reported that publishers are favoring mailing lists as the chief asset over other platform things. So you didn't even touch on that, but that's such a huge thing, I guess in terms of your positioning and how people pay attention to you, including publishers. I do not want to miss this question from Vicky, who has a book coming out next year. Yay, Vicky. Any downsides to having two assessments instead of one main one?
You want to take that, Maeve?
Yeah, so my thought here is that I see this happen a lot with people, and especially where we have multiple courses, maybe multiple micro products, multiple lead magnets. Every single thing that we create inside of our companies requires its own traffic strategy. And a traffic strategy requires, top of funnel copy, creative, ad spend. Even if you're just running organic or scalable organic through podcast guesting, it is different messaging, different positioning. So my advice on this would be, unless you have an army surrounding you, how can you make sure that we have one diagnostic? I might change my answer if I have a little bit more context, but just really, really bear in mind that every single thing we create requires a traffic strategy. Otherwise, we just have a fancy thing or a fancy book sitting on the internet with nobody ever finding it. So we gotta get eyeballs on these things. We gotta get water running through the pipes. Otherwise, it doesn't turn into clients in the back end.
Yeah, and that's why strategy matters so much. When AJ said I had another assessment, it's called the Brand Archetype Quiz. It is going to be the basis of my second book, and uh, it's been here for 13 years. I have over 200,000 people on my email list from that assessment, and it was done like not at this fancy way that the Ulta is done. So that's why I said we're going to like upgrade it to 2.0. And so that's why I'm like, no matter where you are with your book journey, assessments help with everything. As AJ said, building your email list now, and then while you're writing your book and having another step that your reader can take after they finish your book, and then after that you can sell it as a package along with trainings. You can send it to a speaking oh my gosh, speaking, the companies that like hire you for speaking, they love when you send the assessment through and give them the free coupon to experience the way that you would do your talk. I mean, it is an asset that has a lever beyond. And this is why, though, again, what we want to really emphasize, that's why Maeve and I have teamed up in this to support AJ's community, is because you really have to think it through. That's what strategy is, of like what you need and what you would invest in to build versus just building something. Because otherwise, that's the problem on the internet streets, is they're just like, build this thing, get six figures in 6 weeks with one funnel away. It's like, that's not how it works. I wish it were true. We would all be billionaires if that's the case. So we're trying to fix that lie by sharing with you how to do that. And I know that Maeve is actually, there's a link, because I know we're going to jump off to book a call, since you're part of AJ's community, if you want to explore, what strategy and execution of a diagnostic really looks like.
And I just want to remind everybody that I bring people I love who I think are awesome into my world. I benefit in no way at all. I do not take referral fees. I take nothing. So I just, if this is something that you think would be valuable to you, I'm happy for you to do that. And I just think they're brilliant and wanted them to come and talk to you. So I feel so honored that you did that today. There's links in the chat, and then we'll send a follow-up email as well, but grab the links now. Please. Again, we'll send one within the next couple days. All right. We could have talked for hours again. I feel like you need a whole day. I feel like you need an entire day.
It's true.
You need some sort of, I'm just saying, you need
I
some sort of
barely like I feel
event.
like I barely skimmed like the top of the surface of this thing.
You
But
do need a workshop. You do need it. I'm just saying, like, this is next level. Thank you so much for coming. Everybody, please thank Jen and Maeve for joining us. I hope you reach out to them and have a really good strategic conversation. All
yeah,
right, everyone, take care. See you
thank
soon.
you. Thanks, AJ.